recognized him by the way his fingers trembled, not from age, but from music that refused to leave his body. The bow shook against rust-colored strings. The melody wavered like heat above asphalt. People hurried past without looking, heads down, phones up. I stood routed between the pillars of the station and stared at the man. I had once married playing a violin for coins on the 6 line. His coat was 2 sizes too big. His beard had gone silver without warning. It took my eyes a full breath to reconcile the hollow cheeks with the face I'd kissed 1,000 times. When he looked up, the train wind lifted his hair, and for a moment I saw him as he had been at 28, laughing. Sure, the city accord he could play Malik. I said, my mouth dry. His bow stopped in midair. For half a second, a smile lulled, unguarded lit his eyes. Then fear slid over it like a lid. You shouldn't say my name, he whispered without moving his lips. Walk away, Miri. I hadn't heard anyone call me Miri in 18 years. The station flickered, a cheap bulb failing somewhere overhead. A child dropped a quarter in his case and ran to catch a woman's hand. Malik's knees buckled. The violin clattered to concrete. I reached him in 3 strides. He fainted before I could say a second word. Hey, I shouted. I need help. 2 teenagers in hoodies with skateboards under their arms helped me lift him. A woman from the newsstand ran over with a bottle of water and a face that said she had seen everything and still cared. By the time the EMTs navigated the stairs, siren wailing above, quiet efficiency below Malik's eyelids fluttered like moth wings in the ambulance. He stared at the white ceiling and whispered like someone praying, "Don't come. Don't follow." I held the rail anyway. I followed anyway. At the city hospital, fluorescent lights decided to be cruel. The doctor said dehydration, malnutrition, blood work that looked like grief. He had no ID, no insurance, no address. Are you family? The nurse asked, already pinning his name to the paper bracelet with a question mark after it. I'm what he used to call home, I said. Does that count? While he slept, I sat with my back against the wall and tried to fit this Malik with the one who used to fix the leaky faucet without turning off the main, humming the whole time. The Malik who ran the Carter Center out of the old church basement and taught kids like mine how to hold a bow without fear. The Malik who had disappeared one September morning and left a letter on our kitchen table that read, "Forgive me." Don't look. I did not forgive him. I looked until my eyes bled. Then the state called me to inform me that the youth center funds had been misallocated, and I was legally responsible for repayment. Our accounts were empty by then. Our house was gone. I took a suitcase and my 10-year-old and moved into my sister's spare room on 137th. I did not see Malik at a train station. I saw him on the news in a photograph the size of a postage stamp. Grainy proof that a man I had loved was now wanted for questioning. I slept on a mattress for 7 years and never once stopped hearing the sound of a bow on cheap strings. He awoke at midnight. His eyes found me in the harsh light and softened. Then he flinched as if I'd struck him. I told you not to follow, he said. You told me not to look 18 years ago, I answered. I looked anyway. Please don't give me another order. I won't obey. He let out something between a laugh and a cough. You always did what you wanted, Miri. Malik, why did you disappear? Why did you steal from our kids? The question tasted like rust. He turned his head to the wall. Silence sat in the room like a third person. Finally, he said, very softly, I didn't steal. I signed. Signed what? A confession. Malik contracts. I didn't write. Audits I never saw. He exhaled. I signed my life away because they put your picture on the table. My chest tightened. Who developers? Men with city badges who never set foot on our street except to measure it in square footage. The ones who wanted our kids out of that building so they could plow it under and build another. Luxury concept with a name like a perfume. He swallowed. His throat moved like it hurt to be used. I found things in the books I wasn't supposed to find. Ghost vendors. Wires to shell companies. When I asked questions, somebody with a soft voice told me they had a recording of me admitting guilt. It wasn't my voice. It was my name. They said if I didn't cooperate, bad things happened to good women. Then they slid your photo and Layla's school schedule across the table like they were offering me a menu. Our daughter's name arrived like a bird at a closed window. Layla was 28 now and 2 states away, and sending me photos of sunflowers in a backyard she called hers. 18 years ago, she had painted a mural in the Carter Center hallway of kids. Holding hands in a circle, and hung her plastic medal from a nail above the office door. My eyes blurred. The machines beeped in a counterpoint I hated. You let me hate you, I said much later, when I could trust my voice. You let me work 2 jobs and sleep none, and you let our child carry a story that said her father was a thief. He nodded once, like the last nail going in. That was the only way they would leave you alone. You should have told me, I whispered. If I had, you would have looked for me, he said, and you would have died doing it. He slept again. I did not. I sat in the hallway watching the door like worry could be a guard dog. The floor smelled of bleach and old hope. Strangers moved past in soft shoes. The world outside kept happening without any of this in the morning. A man in a suit who was too polished to be a relative stood for exactly 3 seconds at the far end of the hall and looked into the room. When my eyes met his, he pivoted and walked the other way. He didn't look lost. He looked like a note in the wrong bar. Nurse, I said, as he had visitors. The nurse checked her screen. 3 called, asking for him by a name that isn't on his bracelet, she said. We told them, no such patient. My ex-husband doesn't come with easy company, I said. She didn't ask. Malik, I said, when he woke again after noon. Names. There are names you only say once, he said. And then you pay for the saying. Me pay, I said. You've been paying alone a long time. He closed his eyes for a very long minute. When he opened them, they shone like wet wood. Under the piano bench, he said, back of the Carter Center music room. There's a false bottom. I had to make it for the kids who kept hiding candy. I hid something else. What? Sheet music, he said. Real music. And the kind that gets men in suits very out of tune. You hid evidence. I hid everything I couldn't carry. The Carter Center building had been shuttered since the bank took it. The church that had let us use the basement moved upstate. A nail salon had opened next door and closed 2 months later. A padlock sat on the front door like a mouth clenched against a scream. My hands still fit the key code to the alley gate. I don't know why. I pressed it. It beeped obligingly. The back door opened to a smell of dust, and one family of stubborn roaches who stared at me like landlords. The music room had 2 crooked stands and an upright piano with a scar down one leg from the time a boy named Tyrell thought he could handstand off it and learn about gravity. The bench held nothing when I lifted the lid. I ran my fingers along the inside lip until a sliver of wood gave way under my nail. I pried and winced and cussed. A flat panel slid out. Inside were rolled sheets of staff paper tied with twine, a zippered pencil bag heavy with something other than pencils, and a childish drawing of a violin that said, Mr. Malik, you are the best. In purple marker, I spread the staff paper on the floor. Notes marched across lines. At the edge of each sheet, in Malik's neat hand, were dates dates and amounts written in tiny pencil-like annotations only a musician would notice. Under the tape on the back, a flash drive slept like a secret. The pencil bag held a key card with a logo for a development firm that filed its profit under Greek letters and a list of names that made my stomach turn. I put everything back except the drive and the list. I still believed in hiding places. I didn't believe in mine. The alley gave me the feeling of eyes. A dark sedan moved when I moved, slid forward when I slid across the mouth of the alley. I ducked into the bodega and bought 3 things I didn't want, just to see whether the sedan got bored. It didn't. I called an old friend, because in this life, you learn to keep one. Amanda, I said, when she picked up. How do you feel about being a journalist again for one more big mess? Amanda had been a reporter once, the kind who made men say no comment 5 different ways. She'd left after her editor called one of her stories unfriendly to sponsors, and opened a plant store where every succulent had a name and she could choose what lived. Miri, she said, and all the years in her voice vanished. What mess? The kind with a piano, said. We met that night in the back of her store under strings of lights that made the plants glow like hope. She wore a sweatshirt that said, "Water yourself too," and had the bruised eyes of a woman who knows late nights and doesn't fear them. I slid the list across the table. She read. She did not whistle. Lord, she said softly, this is a choir of people who think they're untouchable. Touchable people like to be seen, I said. Let's make them visible. Slow, she said. We do this smart or we don't do it at all. I wanted to walk to City Hall and tape the list to the door with a note that said, "We see you." Amanda wanted to scan the drive, verify again, and put the file in 3 places that weren't my kitchen drawer. We compromised. We copied the drive. We printed 3 pages. We tore my copy in half and stuck 1 half in a book on my nightstand and 1 in a loaf of bread in my freezer, because I am my grandmother's granddaughter, and I learned from her that bread hides truths better than any safe ever built by a man. The next morning, the sedan was on the other side of my block. The morning after that, someone slipped a note under my door in handwriting that tried too hard not to be interesting. Let it go. Miriam, I made coffee and tried not to throw up. I sat beside Malik and watched him fight to breathe, like a man lifting weights underwater. His hand found mine. You shouldn't be here, he said. I always am, I said, when it matters. His smile was the same crooked one that made me forgive him in 1992 for losing our rent to a busted radiator. You were always stubborn, he said. Stubborn got us through. Amanda brought a man with her that afternoon, younger than us, tied too tight. A district attorney's card slid across the tray like proof that we were in a different part of the movie. He didn't ask to keep anything. He didn't make promises. He sat in the ugly vinyl chair and read every line like it mattered where my tax dollars went. If this is real, he said finally, we have to move fast. People like this don't run. They erase. Erase me, I said, and my friend runs a plant shop that will suddenly bloom with documents. Erase her, and 3 reporters she knows will become interested in succulents. Erase them. And the drive goes to the little girl who drew that violin, because she's a coder now, and she hates men who bully her grandma. The DA looked at me over the top of the paper. He smiled a little. I hope you don't expect me to tell you to stand down. I expect you to tell me the truth, I said, when it's dangerous and when it's boring. He nodded. Fair. They raided 3 offices at dawn 2 days later, which is the only honest time to raid anything. They called it a review. The city called it an overreach. The men on the list called their lawyers. The press called it interesting. A reporter outside the marble steps of the courthouse called me a community member with concerns. I called my daughter. "Is he alive?" Layla asked. Her voice held the crackle of a bad connection and 3 years' worth of things we hadn't said all at once. "He's here," I said. "He's sorry. He's a lot of things." "I'm not ready," she whispered. "I'm angry." "Me too," I said. "Come anyway." She didn't. People don't always do what a story wants. The sedan outside my building grew a friend. My landlord got a call about late rent when my rent had never been late. The nurse in Malik's ward received an anonymous complaint about her attitude. Amanda's plant store window cracked in a spiderweb she could not afford to fix. The DA told me to change my routines. I laughed, because routines are the first thing you lose when you have to move twice in 1 year for reasons you never asked for, Mr. Malik. A voice asked one morning at the hospital door. The man in the suit stood there again. He smiled without teeth. "I wanted to drop off this card. For a resource. Housing. We help people like you." "No," I said. "Ma'am," he said, "I wasn't speaking to you." "You don't need to," I said. "Get out." He left a card anyway. There was no phone number on it. Only a name and a logo for a nonprofit that didn't exist. I walked it to the nurse's station and burned it with a lighter I didn't know I still had in my purse. I stood watching until the ember died like a small star that never got a chance to be named. We did not win clean. We did not win quickly. One name fell on a Tuesday, another on a Thursday. A third man resigned to spend more time with his family. Fourth gave a speech about smear campaigns and then failed to show up for the ribbon cutting of a building that had 4 ribbon cuttings and never once filled with tenants. I sat in a courtroom with my back straight as a fence post and answered questions with the voice of a woman who had scrubbed other people's kitchens and learned how to keep her own clean. "Yes, that is the ledger I found," I said. "Yes, that is my ex-husband's handwriting." "No, I did not know." "Yes, I have receipts from the bank to prove the dates." "No, I have not been paid by anyone, unless you count the city finally cutting me the check they owed me 10 years ago because someone misfiled a grant." The judge looked at me over her glasses, and her gaze felt like a hand on my shoulder. "Miss Carter," she said, "you have been patient." "I have been busy," I said. I wish I could say Malik got strong enough to walk into that courtroom and stand in the back with his chin up and clap one time when they read the charges. He didn't. He watched on a hospital television with the sound too low and the captions too slow. He squeezed my hand when the first name appeared, as if he could crush 18 years of silence into powder I could blow away. "I never thought I would see it," he said. "You did it," I said. "You put the music under the bench." He smiled. "You found it." He slept that night with his mouth open and his breath loud enough to scare me. I counted 17 beats, and then another 17 like old prayer beads. I woke to alarms and white running. They took him away behind a curtain that swung back and forth like a goodbye I refused to hear. He came back quieter. "It hurts," he said. "I know," I said, and it was a ridiculous thing to say. True only in the way people lie to the people they love, because honesty would ruin both of them. 2 days later, the DA came with a man from the state who wore his sorrow like a suit he had already slept in. "Miss Carter," the DA said, "we have enough to move forward. The court has vacated the judgment against Malik. His name is cleared." Malik closed his eyes. Tears slid into his beard. "I can play again," he whispered. "You can rest," I said. He died that night. He was 53. He died with a half-smile that looked like a song reaching its last note and finding it sweet. The paper called him a controversial figure at the center of a corruption probe, and then After a paragraph that read like gossip, recently exonerated, they called me his estranged ex-wife. No one called me the name he gave me at the kitchen table when he kissed the back of my hand and said, "Mary, do you know how brave you are? Because journals don't print such things." They wouldn't fit between the ads. People asked me to speak at the press conference. I didn't. I sat on the back steps of the church that had once held our music and watched pigeons argue about crumbs. Layla stood with her arms folded and her sunglasses on. She sat beside me and said nothing for a long time. Finally, "Why didn't he tell me?" "Because he wanted you to hate him," I said, "more than he wanted you to die." "That's stupid," she said. She cried anyway. We buried him with Patch because he would have liked that, and lived every voice because I did. The choir's alto couldn't hold the low notes. It didn't matter. The notes caught in the rafters and dripped down like summer rain on a tin roof. After, a city official shook my hand and said something about compensation. I did not hear the number. I heard apology. Apology is a currency that buys nothing but the barest chance of a decent after. I took it because I wanted to hang violins on a wall again without anyone counting the strings. The Carter Center reopened 2 years later. Not in the church basement, but in a building with windows that caught the afternoon sun and made the dust in the air look like confetti. We called it the bench. People brought instruments out of their closets and said, "He would want this." Children put their names on sticky notes and waited their turn to stand where the light fell, bow held like a promise. Amanda brought plants. The DA brought his kid who wanted to learn trumpet. Even one of the men in suits walked in with no tie and his head down, opened his wallet, and put money in the donation jar without looking up. I let him. This, too, was part of the story. Some days, when the older ones practiced scales, they refused to be quiet, and the little ones beat rhythms on the backs of chairs and somebody's. Mother laughs in the hallway, a little too loudly. I go into the office and close the door and press my palm flat against the sheet music we framed and hung above my desk. The ink hasn't faded. The annotations still march along the margins, like soldiers who finally got to lay down their guns. I think about a man who let me hate him because he loved me harder than I understood. I think about 27 children who grew up and sent me photos of their gardens and their babies and their new apartments with sunlight. I think about bread. I don't check for sedans anymore. I don't read every note slid under every door. I sleep. I teach a girl named Maya how to place the bow at the frog and not let it slide away. I go to the subway sometimes and listen to whoever is brave enough to lift a song into that loud tunnel and make people hear it. Once, months after everything, I heard a melody I knew by heart. I walked toward it before my brain had the sense to say no. The man playing was too young to be Malik. He had a smile. His case had crumpled dollars and 5 quarters. People moved like water past us. He looked up at me and nodded. "You listen like a musician," he said. "I listen like a woman who learned the hard way," I said. "Play it again," he did. I put a folded bill in his case. Before I walked away, I leaned in and said the only honest 4 words that fit into what I had left. "Don't stop. Keep playing."